Why are Golden Age Wonder Woman comics so wild? The transcript for this essay and all of my other videos are on my website, witsendpod.com. With the strength of Hercules, wisdom of Athena, speed of Mercury, and beauty of Aphrodite, Wonder Woman fights injustice all over the world, all while fighting enemies like Nazis, Dr. Poison, Ares the god of war, the Cheetah, and Dr. Psycho. Wonder Woman lives in a fantastical world, but her stories were inspired by the real people who created her. The character was created in the early 40s by psychologist William Moulton Marston and artist Harry G. Peter. Marston and his wife, Elizabeth Holloway, an academic who specialized in psychology, are responsible for the systolic blood pressure test, which is an early version of the lie detector. Peter already had a successful career as a professional cartoonist for newspapers and magazines during the early 1900s. Like Marston, he was a supporter of the women's suffrage movement. Outside of his work in comics and psychology, Marston is infamously known for his polyamorous relationships, which attracted criticism at the time. Marston was in a relationship with 3 women at once: his wife Holloway, a woman named Marjorie Wilkes Huntley, and Olive Byrne. Byrne was one of Marston's students and research assistants and is known as the physical inspiration for Wonder Woman. This is where the whole Wonder Woman lineage ties together. The suffrage movement, the creative team, Byrne being related to Margaret Sanger, who is the writer and activist who pushed for birth control and reproductive rights in America. In 1940, Marston was interviewed by Byrne, writing under a pseudonym, for a magazine called The Family Circle. In the article called Don't Laugh at the Comics, Marston talked about the value of comic books, which got the attention of national comics publisher Max Gaines, who hired Marston as a consultant. Marston convinced Gaines to greenlight Wonder Woman and picked Peter as his artist. This was Marston's pitch, quote, "The obvious remedy is to create a feminine character with all the strength of Superman plus all the allure of a good and beautiful woman." In 1941, Peter came up with Wonder Woman's design on his first try with these sketches. Wonder Woman made her debut in the pages of All-Star Comics number 8 from 1941. Her solo series started in Sensation Comics number 1 from 1942. These stories were popular from the jump, and she got her own title later that year with Wonder Woman number 1. The stories were a mix of social commentary, anti-war themes, and mythology. Wonder Woman's stories from this time are known for their frequent bondage scenes. There's a Wonder Woman image by Peter of her breaking chains that looks to be inspired by a piece women's rights activist and artist Lou Rogers did in 1912. Rogers could carry an entire essay on her own. The image of breaking chains, even in the scenes with bondage, is what the character is about: breaking free, pushing past the societal limitations of her time. Everything about this character is so wild, but all of the real-life factors as to why she exists make sense. With the direction Marston was going, there was no way Wonder Woman wouldn't happen. Looking at all of the people involved, no one else could have done this character in this way. These stories were some of the first DC comics I ever read. At the time, I thought these comics were supposed to be tame anti-war superhero comics, but here's Wonder Woman riding around on a giant flying kangaroo. It's like, oh, Jay Garrick is fighting another bank robber, or Batman is fighting the Joker again? No, do more of this. Steve Trevor, Wonder Woman's love interest, is always going around being an evil Knievel dude in distress. He's always crashing into something too. Wonder Woman's lasso was originally called the Magic Lasso, not the Lasso of Truth. If she ties someone up, they submit to her, which fits into the bondage themes. The actual blood pressure test makes an appearance in these comics too. The Lasso of Truth name is a nice nod to Marston and Holloway's work in lie detection. Wonder Woman number 7 from 1943 sees Diana becoming the President of the United States. During some United Nations type meeting, she volunteers to go to a place called Primal Island to free the people who lost their rights to a tyrant who took over. She has a wild rogues gallery. A lot of them start appearing in the actual Wonder Woman series and not Sensation Comics. Most of her villains represent issues that Wonder Woman fights against, like greed, war, and misogyny. Her first villain is Dr. Poison from Sensation Comics number 2, who looks like a gnarly chemist dude in a green suit with clenched teeth. Peter leaves hints of Poison's identity in his art. It's revealed at the end that Poison is a woman named Maru who created a chemical called Reverso that's supposed to make American soldiers do the opposite of what they're told. She's pretty formidable, but gets outnumbered by Wonder Woman's crew. DC's Ares debuts in Wonder Woman #1, where he competed with Aphrodite to see if war or love could take over the world. The early version wasn't a big, shadowy figure with red eyes. His role in Wonder Woman's stories changes often. Sometimes he thrives off of war and world domination, or he'll help Diana out. Dr. Psycho, Diana's polar opposite, and probably most infamous villain, appeared in Wonder Woman #5 from 1943. He's an extremely misogynistic hypnotist and murderer. What sets him apart is that other villains are willing to get their hands dirty, but Psycho uses mind control to use others. The character is based on one of Marston's Harvard professors. The original Cheetah, who debuted in Wonder Woman #6 from 1943, was an aristocrat named Priscilla Rich. Rich is depicted with dissociative identity disorder, where her other personality hates Wonder Woman. She doesn't even have powers and planned to shank Wonder Woman in her sleep. The later Cheetah human-animal hybrid depictions are more well known than the Golden Age one who wore a costume. Marston dives deep into the psyches of these villains and pulls from his own professional experiences. This gives more layers to the villains than them just being evil for the sake of it. A lot of artists get the anatomically incorrect criticism, but Peter's art is really weird to look at. Everyone is insanely cartoony. He went from newspaper and magazine illustration to sequential comic book art, which was not what he specialized in. It doesn't look like other comics, and Wonder Woman isn't like other comics characters, so it works. Marston and Peter's creative weirdness makes these stories more engaging. Peter, Marston, Holloway, and Byrne equally contribute to aspects of Wonder Woman that make her stand out. Outside of Marston and Peter, most of Wonder Woman's creative team was made up of women. Marston had wives, relatives, and students work on different parts of these stories, like inking, lettering, and writing. Of course, Byrne and Holloway were massive influences on the character. Margaret Sanger would be an unofficial contributor with her influence on Marston and Byrne. Huntley also inked and lettered some stories. One of Wonder Woman's editors was Alice Marble, who is a fan of the comics and also a well-known tennis champion of her time. Marble joined DC Comics editorial and edited the character with Wonder Woman #1 from 1942. Marston put her in charge of Wonder Women of History, which were comic strips printed in Wonder Woman and depicted actual historical figures. Also, in Wonder Woman #1, there's a list of famous athletes of the time who were Wonder Woman fans, so that's pretty cool. Joye Kelly, then called Joy Hummel, was the first woman to write Wonder Woman. She was one of Marston's students at the Katharine Gibbs School for Secretaries, where he taught psychology. The Smithsonian did an article on Kelly where she talked about her process working on Wonder Woman stories. Quote, "When both of our scripts were finished, Marston and I met at the New York office. He checked my script to be sure Wonder Woman was depicted as an admirable heroine, and that my story was exciting and incorporated a positive influence. After typing both of our scripts, I delivered them to our editor, Sheldon Mayer. When Sheldon returned the scripts, they were given to Peter and his assistants to do the art, and to Jimmy and Skippy Roten to do the lettering. All proofreading was done by me before they were delivered to the publisher." Marston's health declined as he struggled with polio and later cancer. Kelly ghost wrote stories but fully took over writing duties after Marston's death in 1947. Holloway and Byrne stayed together even after Marston's death. Peter remained as the artist on Wonder Woman stories until 1958, 17 years after co-creating her. The Golden Age stories are ahead of their time and worth a look just to see the roots of the character. Writer-artist George Perez's 80s revamp of the character is the gold standard for Wonder Woman stories. The stories focus more on social commentary with Diana as a symbol of hope instead of a warrior princess. She spends her time learning about the world outside of Paradise Island. Her first arc is her going up against Ares, where she uses diplomacy to bring the god of war down instead of immediately cutting his head off. Darwin Cook's New Frontier speaks for itself. It features that iconic scene of Wonder Woman freeing women who were prisoners during the Korean War. This comic mixes history and sci-fi and does so much heavy lifting to tie a lot of the Golden and Silver Age DC stories together while making them easy to digest in one big story. Jill Thompson, who worked with Perez during his run, put out a painted graphic novel called The True Amazon that remixes Wonder Woman's origin. It's a solid first comic for new readers. It presents Diana as arrogant, she's not perfect and heroic to begin with, so she has to earn her place and title. There's so much about these comics that are overlooked because they came out during the Golden Age, but the history is so dense and deserves another look. It'd be great to have a Golden Age Wonder Woman animated series. Kite Man has a series, I mean, come on, who's next? Jill Lepore is a Harvard professor and historian who has written extensively about Wonder Woman's history and has a book that breaks everything down called The Secret History of Wonder Woman. She covers the character and people involved in her creation in a really easy to digest way. So here's a nice Wonder Woman reading list. As always, the transcript for this essay and all of my other videos are on my website, witsendpod.com. If it's not on there, it's not me. Share these essays around. Thanks for watching. Chaos ensues.